It's Mark Allen's One-on-One for the newsletter for the month. Today, we have a chance to visit with Roger Skeim, legend. And we want to start by asking Roger a little bit about where you born and raised.
Oh, I was born in Roseau, Minnesota. I raced on a small farm out in Skeim, Minnesota, and finished high school at Roseau. And then I went on to, in 1961, went on to continue my education at Bemidji State for 1 year, and that's the extent of my education. I went looking for employment in the spring of 1962, and I was given an opportunity to work for Edgar Hattin down here in Thief River Falls. He had just started up Polar Manufacturing, it was called, and I got a job there for $1 an hour, and 57 years later, I was still there. So.
Tell us a little bit about, because I was reading a story, Roger, about the initial interview when you started. Talk about your interview with Edgar.
Yeah, it was kind of unique, and it showed me some life lessons, that interview, because I went in looking for employment, like I said, because I wanted to continue education, and I thought I could get a summer job. And Edgar had just started up this company called Polar Manufacturing at that time, and he was doing everything. He was nailing a crate together the day I came to interview, and I just was introduced to him by the receptionist, and we hadn't even begun the interview, and the receptionist said, "Edgar, you got a telephone call," and he took off to answer the telephone. And I stood there, and I stood there, and I stood there, and he never come back. And I noticed that when he left, he had dropped his nail apron on the floor. So I just said, I can't just sit here and stand here. So I picked up the nail apron, and I nailed the crate together that he was nailing. And so when he came back, he kind of was shocked. He seen the crate was nailed together, and he said, "Now, what was it you wanted?" And I said, "I was looking for some employment for the summer," I said, and he said, "When can you start?" He said, so that's how I got started on
work ethic. Back then, and not to pick on work ethic now, but back then, you knew how to work, and that's why you picked up, I'm guessing, why you picked up the hammer.
Yeah, it absolutely. And not only that, but it taught me something. If one of the life lessons that I did learn from Edgar was, if you want something in life, you got to show people you want it. So I've carried that through with my life.
Now, of course, you're with Arctic for many years. One of the passions that I understand you have is racing. Snowmobile racing is a big passion of yours, right?
Yeah, it is. It's become a life and a real strong passion. And I feel so strongly that snowmobile racing is such an important tool in developing snowmobiles. I was blessed to be able to work on snowmobiles, to watch them evolve for 56 years, be a part of helping develop and create that evolution. And over those years, it was very clear to me that racing is, in my opinion, the ultimate tool that can be used to further the technology in snowmobiles. My special friend Russ Ebert, I think, puts it very well when he says, you get a report card every week when you're racing, whereas if you're just developing something, you probably get a report card once a year when you go to the dealer show. But when you're racing, and if you don't find the results that you would like, you're getting a report card that week, so you better go home and work on it if you don't like it. And then even if you do like your results, you continue to work, because if you're just standing still, you're in the mode of being passed. So.
Mm-hmm. And boy, I tell you, one of the things I wanted to talk about, Roger, was the good years and bad years. The bad years being the one that everybody remembers from Thief River Falls, if you've been around this area, were the early '80s when Arctic Cat went down and then Artco came back up, and you were a big part of that. Talk about those years.
I've been blessed and thankful for many things, and because I'm first of all thankful that God brought me to Thief River Falls in 1962. It's where I found my wife, and it's where I continued to enjoy the passion of working on snowmobiles. And we had been doing that, enjoying that life for almost 20 years. In 1981, we come into hard times. The Arctic Cat brand come into hard times, and we went through a bankruptcy, and those were dark years in Roger's life. And I can remember when the CEO would come out to my office in engineering, and he would say, well, you got to let some people go today. And that would go on for another week. I think I had about 70 people on the team at that time. And it kept whittling down 3 or 4 times until I only had about 5 people left, one in each discipline on the snowmobile. And then he finally came one day and he said, well, you're going to have to let the rest of those people go. And, it just tore me apart. And after he'd left and I'd spoken with the 5 individuals that were left working on the team, I found myself for no reason whatsoever, but I went down in the engine shop and I just tore an engine apart right down to the crankcase, tore all the bolts and nuts out and pulled the pieces out, bawling my eyes out as I continued to do that. And then I assembled it again. So when you lose something that you love, it's kind of tough, and those were tough times.
Mm-hmm. Now, it turned around, and it all came back. Talk about coming back then.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and for some reason, when you have a passion to work on something that it becomes a life, you continue to think about it, even though circumstances have shut the door, and myself and Dennis Orlowski and David Thompson and some other guys kept thinking about snowmobiles and what you could do to improve that snowmobile. And so we were working on some suspension systems that we could probably retrofit on past Arctic Cat snowmobiles. And finally we got some discussion going with Bill Ness, who was very influential and part of the guy that helped get Arctic Cat going again. And I think it was in about 2 years we had put our heads together, and about 5, 6 individuals, and figured out how we could. Bill was instrumental in making a relationship again with Suzuki. He was really instrumental in talking to past dealers and distributors on would you buy snowmobiles if we could start building them again. And we was able to start building Arctic Cat snowmobiles in 1964, model in 1963. So it was 2 years that we were not building Arctic Cat snowmobiles. Mm. So it was a pretty joyous day, and I remember Ole Tweet was part of the team, and he would, his slogan, well, the best news in the snowmobile industry was the cat is back. So that was his slogan.
Yeah. And it was, and it's been going strong ever since. And now things change constantly. I know you finally retired here. What yesterday?
No, I was. We discontinued our employment for the Arctic Cat brand in January of 2019. So
yeah,
it's hard to quit thinking about Arctic Cat snowmobiles, and you want to do whatever you can do to make Arctic Cat the best snowmobile, and that was my passion for the whole entire life that I had on snowmobile. You
helped develop, you helped test, you did all this. What's one of your favorite years and models of the Arctic Cat sled?
That's a tough question, Mark, because seems like every snowmobile that our team was able to put together, we had a lot of pride in and so on. And there was many releases over the years. I think one of the biggest influences on the sales and models, a model that had the biggest influence probably on growing sales was back in 66, 67, 68, when we came out with the Panther model, and it was a model that was, I guess you could say, somewhat uniquely different than other snowmobile brands out there, in that it was focused on lightweight. It was the first aluminum tunnel snowmobile. It was the first snowmobile with the engine moved off of the top of the tunnel and placed in front of the track shaft for low center of gravity, and with a spring-biased rear suspension, which was big and necessary in the industry to improve ride. So I'd say that the model over the years that had the biggest influence on improving sales and growing the market share for the Arctic Cat brand was probably the Panther. I am super thankful that I was able to spend my life working on something that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm thankful that it wasn't Thief River Falls, because I have found Thief River Falls to be a very outstanding home for my family and a place to live.
Thanks, Roger.
Roger Skeim, our guest today on Mark Allen's One-on-One.